Hey everybody, welcome to Quality Time with Koala Bear. Your host, Brian Koalas. We're going to be continuing our series about the State of the Union today. Today is episode 4, To Divide and Conquer. Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Here we go, episode 4. So, Antifa and Black Lives Matter. All right, what is happening in the cities of Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Seattle, Oakland, New York City, Portland, and all across America? It's not about police reform, because that actually would be a welcome conversation if we could actually have one. The war on the streets is about tearing down the American Republic as we know it, the USA, and quickening the pace of political progressives to be a Marxist-Leninist-run country. The two big players are Antifa and Black Lives Matter, supported and organized by billions of dollars all across the world in various organizations and community organizers. Remember, community organizers is not just words; it's an actual tactic. All right, it's been used for a long time. Community organizing. Many people who support Antifa and Black Lives Matter, apparel, signs, in different things, and vocalizers support, they usually fall in about two categories, I think. Number one, they likely do not understand the realities of these groups and are just blatantly ignorant. So I have to acknowledge that some of these people are just, they're just followers, all right? And we see that with any type of movement out there. There's always people that tag along and they have no idea about the realities of what they're getting involved in. Or two, they are complicit in their own city's destructions. So let's dive in with Antifa. Antifa being Anti-Fascist Action. That's the actual group's name, Anti-Fascist Action. And tons of people may think anti, so there's fascist. What's wrong with anti-fascist? You would think that would be a logical, like, well, yeah, I kind of support I don't like fascism, so it would be anti. But these people are smart enough to understand that they use words and they twist them in a way that's really nefarious. I'm going to show this to you. Black Lives Matter is the exact same thing. So just the words themselves, as I've said in the previous videos, if you just use the words Black Lives Matter, it's kind of benign in the sense that, I would think most people would agree, and I do believe this, most people agree that Black lives do matter. But a lot of people believe that all lives matter. Cops' lives matter, construction lives matter, doctors and nurses' lives matter, all lives matter, okay? All people are important, all people have value, and so forth. But I'm going to show you here that Black Lives Matter is not just those words, okay? It's a little bit different than Antifa because this is an actual organized, very well-funded network of people, okay? Where Antifa is a lot more loose-based, but it has the same nefarious goals. So to understand, let's get into Antifa first here, okay? So in Antifa, to understand Antifa, we have to go back in history, okay? Now, I told you when I begin these series is I'm going to use the context of history to make my points, okay? Because I think that's one of the best ways that we can understand things is get a grasp of history as accurately as human possible, okay? And it's actually fairly easy to do. We just take a little bit of time, do our research, and we can get really the facts. So we go back in history and we have to understand fascism itself. So it starts with one key player here, and that's Benito Mussolini. Okay, he was born at the end of the 1800s. He was born and named Benito after the Mexican revolutionary Benito Juarez. And so his family and him grew up believing in kind of this continuous revolution. This was, again, he was born at the end of the 1800s. All right, so he grew up believing and was raised in Italy, and Italy was run as a socialist country. But as he started to grow up, he became frustrated and disillusioned with socialism because the change after World War I wasn't happening fast enough. And if anybody knows about World War I, World War One, the societies were effectively, even on the Ally side, the economies were destroyed, and people had a hard time existing. So anytime you have a complete destruction in economies, you're going to have criminals and thugs and everything rise up. So we bring in Benito Mussolini. So with the dissolution after World War I, he created a newspaper, and he controlled that newspaper and the content that was going out. Now, you got to understand that back then, newspapers were the way that you communicate. This is how you got your propaganda out. This is how you got the facts out. Newspapers were a big deal, okay? And you got a lot of attention and a lot of support from the mafia, okay, and from even national patriots, okay, in Italy. So he actually was gaining support from all of these areas in Italy. And he organized these people. Again, here's the key word: organize. He organized people in the early, right after World War I, into the Black Shirts militia, and it was a group of people who were essentially a gang, and to create chaos in the streets and violence. And in 1922, he was elected Prime Minister of Italy, and he formed a government, and that government he named fascism. Okay, so this really does start. Stay with me here. Here we go. All right, so what fascism, to bring his power, to consolidate his power, he instituted assassinations, a full totalitarian, authoritarian top-down government that was complete full of immense power, violence, and compliance. If you weren't compliant, they were going to commit violence. Well, guess who else does that, okay? Even in the movies, the mafia, okay? So he took the tactics that the mafia use, and he's like, we're not just going to do this in these gangs. We're going to formulate a government, okay? And that government, its tactics and its strategies is fascism, and that's where this came from. Now, I'm going to bring in another character because this is important. Adolf Hitler admired what Mussolini did, because Mussolini did this first. Okay, so Hitler actually admired Mussolini and his tactics, and then in Germany, as Adolf Hitler came to power, he admired fascism, and what he did is, as he was forming his power, he took this one step further, okay, and that is to institute genocide, okay, and eugenics, to wipe out a race, the Jews, the Gypsies, the homosexuals, all that stuff. These are facts in history that I think a lot of people forget about. And starting with the brown shirts, just like the black shirts in Italy, they terrorized people. They brought violence in the streets, and that's how Hitler actually formed the Nazi Party. Okay, as he gained more and more power, just like Mussolini and Hitler. They are of the same cloth, okay? It's fascism, except Nazism. They just took it one step further in genocide. Today, in Europe and across the USA, the tactics are used as a model of resistance against any form of authority. Okay, so Antifa actually started, what we call Antifa action, started about 10, 12 years ago, something like that, in Europe, okay? And what they did is that there was little pockets in Europe that spring up every now and then of these neo-Nazi groups that they're actually in Europe. Europe has this problem. The U.S. really doesn't have that problem. There are little pockets, but nothing like the back and forth. Europe doesn't have this all over the place, but you find there's just here and there that it comes up. So Antifa started in Europe, and then when they decided they wanted to come over to the United States and basically start the chapter, if you will, where did they come? They came to Portland, Oregon, okay? Portland's always been this big hub, kind of like Berkeley, California for hippies, except what Portland does is Portland takes it another step further, and they have all kinds of miscreants and malcontents and everything else. So Antifa set up shop in Portland. And so what happened in Portland, how all that started is how the brouhaha really exploded was a social media spat between two effectively juvenile groups, chest thumping their tirades that has now been blown up into protest and violence in the streets, and it's getting worse and worse and more dangerous every single time that they have protests in Portland, and then expanded all across the country. And it's dangerous to anyone who encounters them in these cities across America. Their violence is helping to stoke the division in the streets and the screaming, and this is the embodiment of fascism at the roots. Okay, so they say that they're anti-fascist, but the actual intimidation and the violence that they bring on, they're not anti-fascist. They actually support fascism. So they've kind of twisted it. Let's bring in here another main character here, Mayor Ted Wheeler of Portland, Oregon. He runs that city. Okay, and like a lot of mayors who control the police and everything else, and the way they control they have city councils, but the mayor actually runs that city. So Mayor Ted Wheeler in Portland, he runs the city and lets Antifa have their protests on a regular basis, which constantly turn violent each time. So it's like they never learn their lesson, and that stoked other cities with disillusioned teenagers and college kids and other millennials in their 20s and 30s to organize and protest and destroy property. And after the George Floyd killing, anytime you have something that's a powder cake like that, that just gets even worse. So let's bring in another character, Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan. Okay, who is she? All right, she's the mayor of Seattle. Same kind of setup. She runs that city. Yes, there's a city council, but they're all like-minded. Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan, an activist attorney turned mayor, is sympathetic to community organizing and is a progressive politician and a socialist. Okay. Now we also have this lady here from the city council who also believes in the exact same way as Jenny Durkan. Seattle and Portland are liberal cities, like like every major city in the United States is actually run by these types of people. Okay. These big cities are definitely not run by conservatives. They're not. I mean, you can go to any major city in this country and you look at it, who actually runs these towns, runs these cities, and actually what their policies are, and you can get a pretty good flavor of just how they're allowing all this stuff to happen. So what Jenny Durkan is letting homeless camps expand, just like in San Francisco, just like in Portland. And when that happens is that the crime rates skyrocket, just like in Seattle. When people protested, it just began to get out of control, and Antifa was right there in the thick of it. All right, along with Black Lives Matter and everything else. So Jenny Durkan as mayor let Antifa and Black Lives Matter and every other countercultural delinquent take over several city blocks, barricading themselves, and called themselves CHAZ, and I guess it's now CHOP. CHAZ meaning Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. CHOP is Capitol Hill Organized Protest. It's just ridiculous. So, and in these areas, they destroyed several businesses. It basically becomes a great big sandbox for a bunch of children who are supposed to be adults to just be complete anarchists is basically what it is. Even though they say they're not, but look at the evidence, okay? This is what they're doing. And so they're creating fires and property destructions, and it's just, there's so much vandalism going on in these several city blocks that they've cordoned off and put barricades up, and the mayor lets them happen. And she tells the police, don't do anything, okay? It's absurd. So as of yesterday on the 29th, okay, 3 people have been shot. 1 person's been dead. Those shots happen within the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone or CHAZ, CHOP, whatever you want to call it. And Jenny Durkan has told the police not to go in there. So they could solve this right away, but they haven't. This is a very dangerous powder keg thing, and nobody's doing anything about it. It's insanity. The mayor is content letting groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter be the actual fascist. This is what the powers that be. They're letting it happen, and they're completely fine with it. And essentially, what has happened is this has turned into the Lord of the Flies. Okay, if you've ever read the book, if you've ever watched the movie, this is what it's turned into, and it's insanity. And people need to speak up about it, which is why I'm doing this. And you need to know who's actually running your cities, and do something about it, okay? Because these people have power over our lives in the way that, if we live in these cities, this is what's happening. And if it's not in your town or city, you think it's not coming to you, it actually will. So this is letting the Lord of the Flies manifest itself into a plan for others to follow. So because they're being allowed to continue, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Okay, just like when your kids do some horrible things or knuckleheaded things, if you don't correct that behavior, then that behavior is allowed to grow and manifest itself into criminal behavior, and it just gets worse and worse. So the two books here about fascism that where I draw my two things. There's several books that I've read, but the two I want to present to you is The History of Fascism, 1914 to 1915, and then the second book is Fascism: A Warning. Okay, now they are pretty good reads and give you a really good flavor for what exactly fascism is. All right. So I told you that when I did these series that I'm going to use a context of history, and it is about the books you read and the people you hang around. What are you reading and who are your friends? Okay, and that's a philosophy that I go off of. At this point, I want to play you a 911 call. I think it's in Fredericksburg, Virginia, if I remember correctly here. It'll come up. And that happened just the other day. Now, several 911 calls are coming in across the country as these protests are getting out of hand, because people are getting scared. And these similar situations that are coming up. So I'm going to use this as an example that I listened to. Actually, this morning I listened to. And before I play it to you, in 2019 in Portland, just this last year in 2019, Antifa blocked several lanes in downtown Portland and prevented drivers from going where they wanted to go, and actually made several drivers turn around. They were throwing things at the cars, calling people names, and this is just out of the blue, okay? Out of the blue. And it wasn't like the drivers organized this at all. And people were calling into the radio stations, and one of the days that this happened, I was listening to Lars Larson on the radio, a local radio host, and he got people on the phone who were in the car that when this stuff was happening, and say, what's going on? This is crazy. Now, people who live in Portland are, I'd say about 98% are liberal themselves, and you're scaring the hell out of these people themselves, and nobody does anything about it. And so people, you got to wake up. I mean, these people run your cities, and they're just letting Antifa just run wild, and it's it's just nuts. It's going to get worse. It is getting worse, and so now let's go ahead and queue up the 911 call. Okay.
Do it right now. I want to get to this 911 call, and then I want to get to the subject of all of this, who was in the car at the time trying to get help from the Fredericksburg Police Department, which was given apparently a stand-down order by City Hall. This is one of the most disturbing pieces of audio I've heard in a long time, because any of us could imagine ourselves, particularly here in Charlottesville, being in this exact situation. So here we go. And then we'll talk to Tara Durant, who was the one placing the call. Listen very carefully. Please stop what you're doing and just pay attention to this.
Fredericksburg 911, where's your emergency?
Hi, I'm in downtown. The protesters are blocking.
Which street?
Right at Caroline.
Or do you see any
and
businesses?
Hanover.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're gesturing and they're blocking.
The city has sanctioned their protest, so we just have officers that can only monitor it. They can't do anything about it, but we recommend that
They're blocking. Get out.
Yeah, they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to do that per City Hall. So we suggest that you report this to City Hall and make a complaint there, and that way they can do something about it. Because right now they told our officers that we can't do anything about it.
How do I get out of here? I can't go backwards.
Yeah, I can't. Unless you're hurt or something or get in an accident, our officers can't intervene and.
I can't sit here all night, ma'am. You cannot do. I have a little girl in the car. You can't do that.
You just have to slowly get through the protest. I can't.
Okay, am I going to get arrested when I keep going? Because they're gesturing at my car.
As long as you don't hit any
really
people, like, you're not allowed to hit people.
Well, I will.
Obviously.
I absolutely will, and I need to get out of here.
Okay, ma'am, you cannot hit people with
They're
your car.
They're on my car, all right? They're on my car right now.
But we would suggest you slowly drive through the area. Don't hit anyone with your vehicle.
I
and report
can't.
this to
I
City Hall.
cannot get out of here, okay?
You have to be patient, but I'll let the officers know, okay?
Are you serious?
The
You
city
guys
told us
cannot.
that we can't do anything, ma'am. The city told us that this is a sanctioned event.
That they're blocking. They're blocking people getting through to get out.
Yes, ma'am. The city's allowed that. We can't do anything about that. The police can't. So
Unbelievable.
we're all very frustrated
just keep
about
going
this.
then. Get out of my car. You know, this is going to get dangerous. I got a kid here.
Yes, ma'am. We would suggest that you call up City Hall to let them know about your frustrations because
Get
we're all very
out of the
frustrated.
way. Get out of the way. This is getting scary. I cannot. They're
Or if you get into like a side road or something. But yeah, there's nothing the officers can do to get them out.
Get out of here, okay? Get out of the way. This is insane. Oh, they're on my car. They're on my car.
What kind of car are you in, ma'am?
Get out.
Ma'am, are they actually sitting on or standing in your car
They're on
right
my
now?
car right now.
What kind of vehicle are you in?
I'm in a black Highlander.
All right, I'm going to let the officers know about that, okay? Hold on just a moment.
And I got a little girl in the car crying. Are you kidding me?
And your name real quick, ma'am, just for our records?
Sir Durant, this is insane.
Okay. Sure, thank you.
I'm out of it now. I just had...
Okay, you're out of there?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Good grief. I can hardly believe what I'm listening to, and I'm boiling over in anger for what Tara Durant went through.
Okay, you've listened to that now. The thing that I want to point out to you, and that is, even though she got out with her kid, it is a form of terrorism to do that to people. And I want people to understand just how serious this is, because as this stuff escalates, somebody's going to get seriously hurt. Somebody's going to get killed. Now imagine that they were to force this woman off the road, if they were to throw rocks like Antifa's doing at the windows of this car and had injured that kid, had killed that kid. Now, when in the hell are people going to wake up and realize this is the norm that's going on when Antifa is around? And I'm going to show you that Black Lives Matter does the exact same thing. Because this is not about police protesting. This is deeply nefarious. This is deeply disturbing about promoting fascism or Marxist-Leninism. These people are not playing around. And we better stop playing around. Now, I do not advocate at all being a vigilante. So the appropriate thing to do would be to pressure. You got to put the pressure on the politicians who are running these cities. And you have got to also demand the police take action. Because when you hear a dispatcher saying, and this is not a rare case, this is happening more and more and more. And you can actually find other 911 calls, the exact same thing. They're getting directives to say that they can't really do anything. At what point do people say enough is enough? Okay? Nobody No woman, no man, no kid has to go through that. So we're going to move on to the next one, okay? But we're going to move on to Black Lives Matter. And I'm going to show you exactly just what that organization really is. All right, here we go. Back. And we're going to move to the second part here, Black Lives Matter, or BLM. Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is the actual name of this organization. It is the central organization that directs policy for Black Lives Matter, okay? That's what it is, okay? Black Lives Matter is an actual organized organization, and I'm going to break this down for you. And it's even worse than Antifa in many respects, but they kind of go hand in hand. This is an organization that was founded by 3 women back in 2013 by Alicia Garza, age 39. She's the chief strategic advisor for this group. And Patrice Cullors, she's 36 years old, and she's the top advisor. And the third person is Opal Tometi. She's 36 years old. She's also a founder of Black Lives Matter. And she's currently the executive director of Black Alliance for Just Immigration, and this is tied to the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, which is a Marxist-Leninist group. They are receiving funds from the Tides Foundation, which was created by George Soros. And what it does is it supports socialist and Marxist policies and political candidates. Now, I've gone through their website. It's a bunch of glossy stuff of how they're, social justice warriors, and they got all pretty pictures and everything else. But you got to dig deeper into this organization to really find out what the Tides Foundation does. And this is just one organization, one big, gigantic organization that organizes with Black Lives Matter, funds them. And there's, like I said, there's billions of dollars going into these groups. Well, this is a big one that's going into it. Patrice Cullors, one of the founders, okay, said in an interview at Morgan State University, and I think that's in Maryland, if I remember correctly, at Morgan State University with a professor. She says that her and Alicia Garza are trained organizers. Okay, these are words again. They're trained organizers and trained Marxist. Okay, these are her words. Okay, that we are super versed on ideological theories. So they don't hide from the fact that they're Marxist, and that their goal is to actually bring forth a Marxist government. Okay, whether it's in one city or 10 cities or the entire country run this way. They hardcore believe this stuff, and they use the same kind of tactics that Antifa does. All right. So we got to think of the 1970s. I want to use this as a backdrop. So we're going to think of the 1970s group called the Weather Underground. And they were first called the Weathermen and then changed their name to the Weather Underground because this group was organized by Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn in New York and in Chicago. And that group bombed 25 buildings. Okay, this is in the 1970s. They bombed 25 buildings and killed 2 police officers and 1 security guard in 1981. And these are also trained organizers. Okay, so they're trained organizers, which also means they're trained terrorists. And you see this time and time and time and time again. And I could go on forever about how this stuff actually plays itself out. Black Panther Party, okay, probably did start out as just a Vietnam protest, and civil rights protest. But they understood that, and they bought into the whole Malcolm X thing, that change ain't going to be coming through peace like Martin Luther King Jr. They believed that change would happen through violence, okay? And it's just the pattern repeats itself over and over and over again. So do people chanting... so the thing is that I wonder is that do all the people who are chanting Black Lives Matter really understand the real root of this stuff? I don't think that they do. And what the Black Lives Matter global network really is. So this is about bringing forth a Marxist economic system and a government. These people ain't playing around. These are serious people who've got nothing better to do than say, hey, let's read Karl Marx. Oh, well, that's great. Let's go ahead and let's try to create a bunch of violence, just like we've seen in history. So Black Lives Matter currently does not have tax-exempt status, not yet anyways. So in comes this group called 1,000 Currents, which is based in Oakland, California. And 1,000 Currents fiscally sponsors Black Lives Matter. And so 1,000 Currents, this organization, is a nonprofit organization, and they hold the donation. So if you give to Black Lives Matter, that money is going to 1,000 Currents, okay? And then that gets distributed to where they want it to go. So if you really think it's going to improve the black community, it doesn't, okay? It's the same BS game that politicians play in Chicago and New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco. They say they're there to help those people, but they don't. So they're stoking the hatred and division when they're saying that they want to be listened to. So they twist this stuff around. Well, you know who is the biggest recipient, the single biggest recipient so far, and that was that failed guy in Texas that ran I forgot his name, but the guy who ran for senator and lost. So the name escapes me. I forgot to write that down. And guess what? He ain't a black guy. He's a white guy, okay? So they're just flat out lying to these people. And guess what? Where do you think the money's going to go next as we head into the fall campaign? Just take a wild guess where that money's going to go. Do you think it's going to go to make black lives better? It doesn't. This is nothing but a damn lie. Okay, so people got to dig into this because these people ain't messing around. They want a Marxist regime, and they're willing to do whatever it takes, lie, cheat, and steal. So the donors are allowed to write off the donation. So if you give money to Black Lives Matter, you're allowed to write that off on your taxes, and that's according to the IRS. They're like, yeah, okay, if you give it to this organization, you can write it off on your taxes. It's insanity, all right? Why would you do that? It was interesting because they're allowed to do that. Karl Marx himself, I mean, you think about it, Karl Marx would actually love this, all right? Think of a capitalist government allowing tax deductions for money earmarked to destroy it. I'm sure in his grave he'd be like going, oh yeah, this is fantastic. All right, this is the way we're going to bring down the capitalist system. That's insanity. Okay, I'm not in favor of that. I suspect you don't are either. But if you are in favor of it, you really need to understand just how important history really is. This is not about making black lives really matter or improving. It actually is going to destroy it. Because that's what a Marxist regime, that's what a fascist regime, that's what these do if you go back and look in history. This is why I'm trying to present this information to you. Use the context of history. According to factcheck.org, 71% of the money that goes in Black Lives Matter when you donate, 71%, they break it down, 71% goes to salaries, benefits, and consulting fees. Okay? So 7 cents of every dollar goes to that. So how is that going to help anybody? How is it going to help the average person? It doesn't. Okay, they're ripping you off. Okay, they're ripping people off. And they're just playing on emotions. Black Lives Matter organization is run by Marxists who have access to lots and lots of money. Okay? And they're using it to take advantage of the chaos and the violence to bring forth a Marxist government, whether it's one city, whether it's 10 cities, whether it's 50, whether it's the entire U.S. government. That's what they're trying to do. So let's bring in this character here, Hawk Newsom. He heads the New York City chapter of Black Lives Matter, and he said on a couple of different programs, one of which is Martha McCallum's show on Fox News, but he says on national television that if this country, I'm going to quote him, if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn the system down. Then he continues to say that he might be talking figuratively or literally. Well, if words really matter, then we got to take people at their word when they talk this explosive about things. That if they don't get what they want, no matter what it is, they're going to burn it down. So you find a lot of people are giving in to this stuff, not only the so-called believers in this movement, but also the governments. The governments are letting, oh yeah, do whatever. So if they don't get their way, they're going to burn it down. The problem here is, folks, is that you have to decide. You either want your cities to burn down or you don't want your cities to burn down. You want your family safe or you don't want your family safe. You want this country to prosper or you don't want this country to prosper. So I'm sorry to really put it in those terms, but you're going to have to get really honest and look at history, and you're going to have to pick a side. Because I'm in the side of actually loving this country and actually trying to improve this country. So yeah, I believe Black Lives Matter, but I also believe all lives matter. And we need to judge these things individually on its cases, on its merit. So the two books that I want to present to you where I draw this information from, and a lot of places over the years that I've read, but I'm just going to give you two right now. Just maybe some of you will pick this stuff up. The first one is the first one's called The Communist Manifesto. And it's written by Karl Marx, and I forgot the other guy's name that co-wrote the book. And so this was back when Karl Marx was younger. He wrote several books, okay? One of which was Capital, and the other one is, and this one here is called The Communist Manifesto. You really want to understand everything to do with Marxist, Leninist, fascism. You want to understand how this stuff really works. And communism and socialism, all these different stuff. I know what I said before about isms, so I'm not trying to make everything about isms. But these are philosophies that get put into economic practice and in how a government is ran, whether it's in the United States or whether it's in another country like in Europe. And they tried this stuff over and over again. The big enchilada being Russia, okay? It's changed, but there's still a lot of those flavors that are there. Here's the second book here. Bukharin and the Bolshevik Revolution. Okay, the author to this one is Stephen F. Cohen. He's a retired professor from New York University. I listen to him on the radio when he comes on the John Batchelor show, and I've listened to him for about 3 or 4 years now, and I started picking up his books and reading them. The third one, it's going to be a different author, but the book is called Marxism, Philosophy, and Economics. And this is by Thomas Sowell. If you don't know who Thomas Sowell is one of the most important intellectuals on the conservative side. Now, here's why I'm telling you about Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell was a Marxist himself for about 10 years of his life in his teens and early 20s. And guess what? He just turned 90 years old. So this guy is, he's still around, and he's still writing books and everything else. But he wrote this book many years ago called Marxism, Philosophy, and Economics. Once he realized that the path that he was following was so dangerous and absolutely destructive to the human spirit, he's like, I'm not going to follow this crap. And so he is incredibly important even today. And I've read 3 of his books, and he's got a whole ton of them out there. So hopefully I can get to more of them. I think he's got a new one that just came out, and he's 90 years old. But the cool thing is that this guy is one of the smartest human beings on the planet, because this is a very deep thinker about these types of issues. And if you don't understand who Thomas Sowell is, this is an American black man who is super smart, very articulate, and something that I do think that a lot of black people should emulate. And I got to tell you that these 3 books on having to tie into Black Lives Matter, what they're really after, this will give you, this will scare you to death, okay? Because this stuff keeps recycling itself through history, and they're trying to push it again in America. So this is not a flash in the pan. These are very serious people. Black Lives Matter, Antifa group, they're not messing around. And this is what's happening. Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they know what they're doing. And so the average protester out there, and the community organizers are mixed in a dangerous recipe for disaster. It is a stick of dynamite that is beginning to be set off in this country. And one of the many sad cases that are happening is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where a mob of protesters took over. A bunch of protesters used vigilantism over 2 black teenage girls missing, and destroyed a house and set fire because they perceived the police not doing enough to find them. Now, both girls were found safe several blocks away, and they wanted to hang out with boys. But the mob protesters destroyed a black elderly woman's home who was living there. Antifa and Black Lives Matter and vigilantism are sowing the seeds of something. And we better establish law and order before more innocent people are hurt. Now, at this point, I want to get close to the end of this video, and I want to play you a news clip. And I want you to see for yourself just how unruly a mob can get. Okay? This is very dangerous stuff. You're going to see it and hear it for yourself. And then I'm going to end, and then I'm going to come back and we'll finish up this video.
24 hours ago, people set this Milwaukee house on fire, claiming Milwaukee police were not doing enough to help find 2 girls.
Let's take you back now to how all of this unfolded. Milwaukee police say they searched the home near 40th and Lloyd Monday and Tuesday after receiving a report of a missing 13-year-old and a missing 15-year-old girl. Police say when they showed up yesterday, a crowd gathered outside. Now, some of those people thought someone took the girls to that home to be sex trafficked. Many told 12 News they were upset, saying police weren't trying hard enough to find the girls. Well, 12 News was there as people broke into the home and set it on fire. As all of this unfolded, police say people in the crowd fired shots and hit 3 people. Officers also say people in the crowd started throwing bricks and pieces of concrete at police. They issued these photos today. Police also say both missing teenagers have been found, and they were not at that house.
We can't allow an unruly crowd determine what that investigation is. What you had today is vigilantism. You had people take the law into their own hands and run off of information that has not been proven.
Nick Bohr joins us now live. And Nick, investigators say both teens denied knowing anyone at that house, and they have been found safe tonight.
Right, Joyce, and the family tells me they were never at this house. They are safe, as you mentioned. Their family tells me the girls were not assaulted or sex trafficked, and again, were never at this house, which now stands in ruins tonight.
They started throwing burning debris inside the back window. You can see that's starting to catch fire now. The van totally engulfed in flames.
The chaotic scene built over several hours after rumors spread that 2 kidnapped girls were being held inside this duplex at 40th and Lloyd.
But we knew they needed us, and that brought us all here. So that alone, I think, speaks volumes over what some bad apples in the bunch might do.
Epiphany Connor returned today with her kids to help clean up.
as well as getting our point across and getting justice, we also want to keep our communities clean.
As we talked, Pat Bills drove up and said his grandmother just moved in downstairs there a few months ago.
My grandmother's been a loving lady. She had 3 strokes. She's fighting for her last little life that she got left. I'm surprised this right here didn't just set her up.
And he directly challenged Connor's take on the day's events.
After they get the right information for them to come back and still burn down the house on some terrorism stuff, that's wrong. And then y'all gonna use that to make a move and talk about some we empowering. Y'all not empowering. Y'all not empowering at all. Y'all terrorism.
12 News has learned police have been called to the home 8 times this year. 6 of those calls were just this week. None were for sex trafficking. The owners and landlord of the house say they do ministry work in the inner city after working as missionaries overseas.
I was in tears. When we moved back to Milwaukee, we were doing all we could to help build up this whole community. And so, yes, devastating.
So, Nick, what did the family tell you about where the girls were? They had been reported missing on Sunday.
Well, they said they're fine. They say they were just with some boys, but wouldn't really elaborate beyond that. But they said they were not at this house and were not assaulted. They blame the confusion on social media rumors.
So stay tuned for that. Episode 5, that should be coming up hopefully in a day or two. That's what my plan is. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment. Please share. I'll allow it. Okay, I allow it. I want people to give me the feedback. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine. Share it with people. If every time I hear on the news, we need to have a conversation. It just seems to be that people don't really mean it. So me doing these videos, I'm actually trying to have a conversation, and I'm trying to understand what's going on and apply it to history. History is very important. Know your family history. Know as much history as you can. Apply it to your life, and so that you understand the context of things. So with that being said, I love you guys. I believe in this philosophy of it's about the books you read and the people you hang around. So what are you reading? Who you hang around? God bless America. I love you. Take care. We'll see you at episode 5. Bye-bye.